Isn't it bliss?
Hey, it's Warhammer Sean. I'm back. We're going to do the final part of the Harlequin Codex review. And, sorry, I'm just turning a light on here, so hopefully I get a little bit more brightness here. Maybe. Okay. So, we're going to go into the appendix. Most people probably know from the White Dwarf, but they're levels of alliance. They're battle brothers with Dark Eldar and Eldar. I'm assuming they're probably going to fact in that the Eldar Corsairs are battle brothers with them too. It makes sense. And then they're allies of convenience with armies of the Imperium and Tau Empire. They're desperate allies with Orcs, and come the Apocalypse with Chaos Demons, Chaos Space Marines, Necrons, and Tyranids. Makes sense. So let's go through the Warlord tables quick. Now, with the Warlord traits, there's 3 tables. One is Light, Twilight, and Dark. Now, if you take the Death Jester and the Shadow Seer, you can roll a d6 on one of the Warlord tables and the Warhammer 40k rules. So, like normal for the rules powers, or rules, the big rule book, Warlord Traits. Or you can roll a d3 on either of the Light, Twilight, or Dark Warlord Trait tables found in the following pages. So they're more limited. Now, the first 3 are the same for Light, Dark, and Twilight. So I don't know why they even said that. I don't even know why they kind of... It's not like it's quite 3 tables, because the first 3 are the same and the last half are different. And the Troop Master can roll a d6 in the big rule book and a d6 in the Light, Twilight, and Dark tables. So they really want you to take a Troop Master as the Warlord. Why they didn't just make a High Avatar or High Troop Master as an HQ choice when we could have had a CAD, and they would have solved everything. It would have been, then they would have been forced to take a Troop Master. But whatever. So let's go through them. So the first 3 in all, Light, Twilight, and Dark, are the first one is Luck of the Laughing God, and that one is your Warlord rerolls to hit rolls of 1, shooting and in close combat, and all saving throws of 1. So it's like a little buff to saving throws. The next one is Fractal Storm. Your Warlord has a 4-up invulnerable save. That's very nice. A little better, 1 better than the 5-up. Not bad. A Foot in the Future. Your Warlord and his unit can add 1 to the distance they move whenever they move, meaning that they can move 7 inches in the movement phase. They can move a further inch whenever they run or charge or fall back or regroup or hit and run or consolidate or sweeping advance. So, so sweeping advance, it actually adds to sweeping advance, which is more of an initiative test than a run, but apparently it does affect that. I wonder if they're going to FAQ that later, because that doesn't seem quite right, but that's how it's in here. Now, you got pretty good initiative anyway, so you're probably going to win that fight. So let's go with the Light Warlord trait first. So number 4 is Hero's Call, which is you can add 4 to any roll to seize the initiative, which means you're normally seizing on a 6. Now you get to be... isn't that sad? You basically seize on a 2-up. So anything but a 1 you're going to seize on. That's pretty good. Sorry that I had to do math with fingers there. That's pretty sad. Webwalker. So before deployment, select D3 units in your Warlord's detachment. Each of these has one of the following special rules. Deep Strike, Infiltrator, Scout. Each may select a different rule. So that's helpful. And the last one is a Trick of Light. Immediately after your forces have deployed and all Scout redeployments have been made, you may remove this Warlord and or up to D3 friendly units with Harlequins faction within 12 inches of the Warlord from the table. Each unit that is removed in this way can either be immediately deployed again using normal deployment rules or placed in reserve. So it's kind of a way to kind of redeploy, especially if you had to go first deploying and you want to kind of counter their deployment move. So it's helpful. Twilight. So we've got Luck of the Laughing God, Fractal Storm, Foot in the Future again. Number 4 is Narrator of Wars. Come on. In this mission, if this mission uses variable game length, you may add 2 or subtract 2 to any d6 roll to determine if the game ends or not. So if you really want it to end, and it normally would end on a roll of, it would continue on a roll of a 3-up, you could make it a 5-up to continue, or from turn 6 to going into turn 7, it'd take a 4-up, and now you can make it a 6-up. So you can really have it end, or you can try to make sure you keep it going if you want to keep it going. Instead of a 4-up on turn 6 to 7, you can have it be a 2-up. So, yeah, it's a good thing. The next one is Steps of Mortal Transition. Any 2 wound rolls of 6 inflicted by your Warlord in close combat, and then in parentheses, or to any wound roll of 5+ when making a Kiss of Death attack, has the instant death special roll. So heck, even if you're not using, or you don't even have a Harlequin's Kiss, you still basically get the instant death on a roll to wound of 6. Now, drawback to that is like the Harlequin's Caress. If you roll to hit with a roll of 6, it automatically causes a wounded AP2, so you don't roll to wound. So you're not going to cause instant death with those. But anything that doesn't roll a 6, if you roll a 6 to wound, it does, but it's going to be at normal AP, so they'd have to fail a save. So it does kind of hurt the Caress a little bit, but still a good Warlord trait. Dance of Infinite Mirrors. Once per game, your Warlord and his unit may make a mirror leap instead of moving in the movement phase. A unit making a mirror leap moves 24 inches. When moving in this manner, your Warlord and his unit can move over all other models and terrain as if they were open ground, but cannot end their move on top of other models or impassable terrain. A unit cannot charge the same turn it makes it a mirror leap. I've noticed a lot of things like these guys and with the Necron Codex and stuff, they seem to like a lot of things that are disobeying the rules for going over other models. So the Dark Warlord trait table, like I said, the first 3 are the same: Luck of the Laughing God, Fractal Storm, Foot in the Future. So Luck of the Laughing God is reroll rolls of 1 to hit and to shoot, and shooting in close combat to hit, and then all saving throws of 1. Fractal Storm is a 4+ invulnerable save. Foot in the Future is adding 1 inch to the distance of movement phase. Run, charge, fallback, regroup, hit and run, consolidate, and sweeping advance. Alright, Dance of Nightmares Made Flesh. So enemy units in base contact with your Warlord or his unit must roll an additional d6 when making fear tests or morale checks. That's pretty big, especially if you've got that piece of wargear already that decreases leadership by 2, and now you're making him roll 3d6 at combat resolution. Probably going to fail. So that's definitely a good one. Twisted Encore. At the end of the game, before determining the winner of the battle, you may move your Warlord and his unit once as if it were the movement phase, then either run or shoot as if it were shooting phase, and then if you wish, charge and fight a single round of close combat as if it were the assault phase. Your opponent can overwatch and fight back as normal. If your Warlord is locked in close combat at the end of the game, he and his unit can only choose to fight 1 additional round of close combat. So if he's already locked in close combat, he can't do all that stuff. He just gets to fight another round of close combat. If he's embarked on a transport, the Warlord's unit may disembark, but their transport cannot move or shoot. And after your Warlord and his unit have performed these extra actions, the game ends. So it's kind of like an extra move that your Warlord and his unit get to do to try to do something great at the end. It's actually kind of cool. Like my last game, well, the last game we had yesterday, if we could have just one Dire Avenger we were fighting against held on in close combat, and if it would have died or fallen back, we would have gotten 2 more victory points in the Maelstrom, and we would have won instead of tying. And having that extra turn would have been really nice to be able to do that. So I can see that's useful. The final joke is if your Warlord is removed as a casualty while fighting in a challenge, both players roll off immediately. If you win, or the result is a draw, your Warlord's opponent is also removed as a casualty. That's pretty big. Like, let's say, I mean, you have this Warlord trait, and not that you necessarily want to give up Slay the Warlord, but let's say you're going to go in after the opponent's Warlord, or there's a really good model on the board that you know you're probably not going to be able to deal with in close combat or in shooting. It's a chance. I mean, it's still a dice roll, but it's probably a better chance that maybe you would have had otherwise, like some really uber unit. You know, I'm thinking like in close combat, like Logan Grimnar or something like that, or Drago was really hard to take down. Or Dante, you know, you send him in, he's going to get a chance to swing maybe he's higher initiative, probably is, and then he's going to get pwned, but you have a chance of removing the other one as well. So you might get Slay the Warlord too, and really remove a really crucial piece of your opponent's puzzle. So I really think that's funny. I think it's actually, well, final joke, obviously, and it's kind of cool. I actually think the first couple times, or first time I play Harlequins, I'm going to try the Dark Warlord table because I just really like them. I don't know. They just kind of make me giggle a little bit. Anyway, that's the Warlord table traits. They also can take the book powers. However, most of the detachments and formations in here, you don't get a chance to re-roll book powers. It's really, if you're taking Harlequins as a Warlord, it's only the Harlequin powers, so to some degree you're better off using them. And they're actually, you know, for the Warlord traits, you know, some of them in codices or codices are pretty much duds. I think in this one there's so many Warlord traits, and I think all of them, there's a few that are just kind of meh, but for the most part a lot of them are actually pretty good or useful, or, you know, something that you can use throughout the game. So I'm actually, you know, kind of fine with them. I kind of like them. All right, so let's go to the moment we've been kind of waiting for, or maybe not waiting for, but we're going to go through the Phantasmancy discipline. So the Primaris power, which is Warp Charge 1, is a Veil of Tears. Veil of Tears should sound familiar because that's what the Psyker always had since the beginning, what they could do. Now, not always since the beginning. When they were in Rogue Trader before Veil Tears, they kind of had a special rule, but they also could take book powers from the Rogue Trader book, you know, and there were some really cool ones in there. Some of them actually have come back, like Hammerhand, and some powers that, like, the Grey Knights have that are in the original, you know, that everybody could have for Psychers. So the Veil of Tears is a Warp Charge 1. It's a blessing, and basically, it targets the Shadow Seer and his unit, so it has to go on the unit. While the power is in effect, an enemy wishing to target the Shadow Seer and his unit must roll 2d6 and then take it times 2. That's the distance that they can see to shoot. And if they fall short, the enemy can't fire that turn. They can't pick another target. They just can't even fire. So it's cool. You know, it's once you start getting kind of closer, it's less likely that that's going to work, but it's still a good power. It's a good Primaris. I'm happy with it. The next one is Dance of Shadows. Now, this is what they, in 6th edition, the beginning of 6th edition, what they FAQ'd the Veil of Tears to do. Then they ended up changing it back when they redid the codices, and they ended up FAQing the Dark Eldar Harlequins before they got their new 7th edition codex to be like the old Veil of Tears. But the Dance of Shadows is a blessing that targets a single friendly unit within 18 inches. Now, in the previous incarnation, it was just on the unit and the Shadow Seer. But it's 18 inches, and while the power is in effect, the target unit has Stealth and Shrouded special rules. So Stealth and Shrouded. That's pretty powerful. Actually, it would be nice to have both of those and get them both off. But, you know, once again, we're dealing with Harlequins and Eldar, unless you really load up on Psychers, which is going to get expensive and probably not that competitive. Now, it's possible with Harlequins because you could take 7 Shadow Seers, so it's more likely. But, when you fight against other psychic armies, like Grey Knights and Demons, they're probably going to win the battle, and they're probably going to shut down any of your powers, so you really can't rely on them. But against a lot of other armies, you're probably going to be able to get some of those things off. But, even now, unless you have just a ton of dice, 7th edition Psychic phase is different, and it's not like you're going to get all your powers off. You just kind of have to think, and how many dice do you want to throw at it to try to get it off. The next power number 2, is Peel of Discord, and this one is fantastic. Like, this is my favorite power that's offensive for the Harlequins, and I think people, when they first looked at it, didn't realize how great it was. But it's a 9-inch range, and people are like, oh, 9 inches is great. Strength 4, Assault 2d6, Concussive. Okay, this doesn't sound so good until you read that the Peel of Discord is a Nova power. That's right, a Nova power. That means that it's everything within 9 inches of the Psyker gets hit with this. Assault 2d6, Strength 4, Concussive. Let's say you happen to ally in with Dark Eldar, who has a webway portal that gets to go wherever they want, and you can drop these guys in right in a whole bunch of guys and just melt the crap out of things. Yeah, that's a good power. That's a good power. Now, I can't remember, and I will, actually, I'm just going to pause this video and I'll come back, because I want to make sure that's how it works, but I can't remember if you can fire Nova out of a transport. I think it might only be Witchfire power, so if you're going to do it, you probably have to drop them down without a ride. I kind of like using the webway portals with a ride, like a raider or something, to give a little protection for one round, so they have to destroy the raider and not the unit. But I'm going to check. I'm going to be right back. Okay, welcome back. I did check it. Apologize, guys. So it is only Witchfire powers. So for some reason, even in the book, it's not even Focus Witchfire powers. It's just Witchfire powers. So Focus Witchfire powers and Novas do not work out of transports. They have to be on the ground. The one thing I didn't realize with Nova powers, I did not realize this, is that the Nova power actually even hits flying vehicles and flying monstrous creatures within range. So they don't. It doesn't have to roll the hit, but it hits automatically. And I know in 6th edition, that's why I assumed it didn't work. In 6th edition, if it didn't roll the hit, you couldn't hit a flyer, because otherwise you had to roll the hit and snap shoot, and anything that was a template or anything like that didn't work. So it's interesting, because Nova does now work on flying monstrous creatures or flyers that are flying. So that's a change I didn't realize. It's a little bit off of Harlequin topics, but it's something I didn't realize. Power number 3 is Shards of Light. Sorry, the last one was Warp Charge 1 as well. And Shards of Light is a Witchfire power. It's Strength 3, and it's a 3d6, and it causes blind. So it's Strength 3, but 3d6, so you could potentially get 18 shots. You could get, that's not average. Average is probably going to be 9. So still pretty good. 9 shots is Strength 3. It's an assault weapon, so it doesn't stop you from assaulting. Blind, if any unit hit by one of these one or more models with this weapon, it has to take an initiative test. So even if it's hit, it doesn't even have to be wounded. If it's hit, it has to take an initiative test. And if it's if the test is passed, then they do everything normally. But if it's failed, then the weapon skill and ballistic skill is 1, which means they're hitting on 6s, shooting-wise, and they're basically hitting on 5s or 6s, unless you're fighting Grots, because they're ballistic skill, their weapon skill 2, so you're probably still hitting them on 4s. But most things you're probably going to be double +1, so anything weapon skill 3 or higher is going to be hitting you on 3s, and the blinded unit's going to be hitting them on 5 and 6s. So any model that does not have an initiative characteristic, so non-walker vehicles, buildings, aren't affected by this. So, I mean, heck, here's a thought. You could use this on something like a big walker, or I'm going to put this out here, but like gargantuan creatures or super heavy like walkers like Imperial Knights, with the intent of just causing a blind test. And if that initiative test is failed, they're blinded. It's not going to hurt them, but it's going to make them fight really crappy. So that might give you more of a chance to survive, and also survive in close combat or not get stomped to death. So this is a useful power, not even for the damage it could do, but also for what it can do to kind of hurt the opponent as far as being able to fight and shoot. So I really like that power. A lot of people I think are going to look at it and go, oh, strength 3, who cares? But it is good. The next one is another very good power. This is Warp Charge 2. The rest of these 4, 5, and 6 are all Warp Charge 2. Fog of Dreams is a really cool one. It's a malediction that has a range of 24 inches. While this power is in effect, the target unit may only snap fire shots, and when rolling to hit in close combat, they only hit on rolls of 6. So it's almost like that unit is, everything they're fighting is invisible. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of the opposite of invisibility. It's hurting them. I think it's a little bit more fair than invisibility to some extent, because the rest of the army can still affect the rest of your army, so it doesn't make that unit kind of unkillable. Just makes that unit more killable. So now it doesn't change the weapon skill, so you're still hitting them at whatever your weapon skill is versus theirs. So Laugh of Sorrows. Now this is a Witchfire power with a range of 24 inches. The target must take 2 separate leadership tests. The target will suffer 1 wound for each point the first leadership test is failed by, and 1 wound for each point the second leadership test is passed. Oh geez, this is different. I read this wrong the first time. I just realized that. So they must take 2 different leadership tests. The first one, they suffer 1 wound for each point the first leadership test was failed by. So if let's say your leadership 8 and you rolled a 9, you would take 1 wound. And then the second leadership test that you take 1 wound for each point the second leadership test was passed by. So let's say the next time you had a leadership of 8 and you rolled double 1s, so that would be 2. Then you would have 6 wounds, and no armor and cover saves can be taken against these wounds. So invulns still work. Wow, that's an amazing power. I thought it was what they passed by each time. So the cool thing about this power is that you can target units that have low leadership or high leadership, and one of those 2 tests are probably going to fail by something. Now, you could get unlucky and they could pass the first time and then fail the second time, and then it wouldn't hurt them at all. But chances are it's probably going to. The last one is Mirror of Minds. It's another Warp Charge 2. It's a focused Witchfire power, and it's a power that hits a target within 24 inches. The target model and the Shadow Seer both roll a d6 and add their respective leadership values to the result. If the scores are drawn, or if the Shadow Seer score is higher, the target suffers a single wound with no armor saves or cover saves allowed. Now, it's 1 wound, but listen to this. You repeat this process until either the target model is slain or the target model rolls a higher score than the Shadow Seer. Now, it's a focused Witchfire power, so if you actually have to generate 3 successful warp charges, to hit the person you want. If it's a unit and you're trying to pick out a person, if it just gets 2 warp charges, then you're just going to hit the units, the first thing in the unit. It's still not a bad thing. It's a pretty amazing power too. So they do have their own tactical objective cards too. I'm not going to go through those. I guess if you want to check those out, you can. Some people play Maelstrom, some people don't. I think Maelstrom is cool and fun. I think the cards themselves aren't quite always the fairest way to do it. And we've been kind of experimenting. Our local groups have kind of been experimenting with them, and I think kind of what Adepticon's doing, and also what Good, Bad, and the Ugly did. I especially like what Tim Schmidt, who ran Good, Bad, and the Ugly, did, where it was a sheet, and you just chose 3 to go for each turn, and once the turn was done, you couldn't do them again. But I think kind of having a fixed, because some of the cards are a little like too good, or some of them are a little too hard, or some of them are like impossible to do, like kill a flyer, kill a bunker, or and so some of those are kind of dumb. What we were doing is like, okay, you get those cards, you just discard them right away to redraw another one. But I think I will get the cards because I want to collect everything Harlequin. I'm sure I will, I'll have them, but I don't see myself using them very much. I don't see a lot of players using the Maelstrom cards, maybe for fun games, but I think most people, if they're going to play Maelstrom, are probably going to be using modified ones, so I just don't think it's worth talking about. So that's the Codex as a whole. Do I think it's a good Codex? I do. I think overall it's a good Codex. I think by itself, just Harlequins running detachments of Harlequins, I think you could potentially be competitive. I don't think you're going to be top tier because they're just so elite. They're so expensive. There's nothing that's cheap. It's just very unforgiving when you start losing models. I think, and the invuln saves aren't great. Like some of the really uber units when you're talking about like, Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, Terminators, they're really expensive, but in volume of fire will kill them, but few shots aren't going to kill them because they got a 2-up save. When you get a few shots at a Harlequin squad with a 5-up save, you're going to lose Harlequins every time, even small amounts of fire, not even large amount. Large amount of fire, you're just going to lose the whole squad. So unless you use trickery like psychic powers and like that, but you can't always rely on it. So I think it's going to be hard to be competitive with Harlequins. Doesn't mean that I won't do it and other people won't do it. I will, because I'm kind of a purist. But I think they're going to work better when you combine them with their cousins and their so using Eldar or Dark Eldar. I honestly think. Here's my thought on it, and you can feel free to disagree with me or agree with me. If you want to disagree with me and put stuff down and say, hey, I'd appreciate it if you didn't just go, hey, you're stupid, I don't agree with you. I'd appreciate it if you said, hey, I don't agree with you, here's why, here's how I think it would work best. Because I'd like to see it. I want to hear your reasoning or argument for it, because that might change my mind. Like, hey, you're right. I didn't even think about it this way. But my thinking is right now is that I think that Harlequins complement Dark Eldar super great, and I think the two make the two codices together a very powerful one. I think you can run Eldar by itself and still be very competitive. You don't really need any. They can kind of do it on their own. But Dark Eldar by themselves, they're hard to be competitive to because everything's so paper armor. It's so easy to kill. They don't have a lot of good armor values. Their troops aren't well armored for the most part, except for the Shadowfield. They don't really have a lot of good saves. And you're probably thinking right now, well, okay, why are you arguing the Harlequins are good with them? Because they have paper everything and not such great saves either. And that's true. The reason why I think they work well together is I think GW thinks and wants us to think the Dark Eldar are a close combat army. And it's cool on paper and everything. They look like they should just be the close combat, like orcs, just like, be close combat. But unfortunately, they lack grenades a lot of times, and honestly, they might have a higher initiative, but they're so weak in most things that they have. Yes, they're poison 4-up, but it means you're not wounding half the time. You're going to usually get retaliated upon and die. And so, honestly, I think their strength is there's not a lot of units, but I think their strength is really spamming things like Venoms or Cabalite warriors or something that are shooting poison, a lot of poison weapons. And that's what they're really good at. Yes, they can take dark lances and a few things, but I don't think they can do it really effectively. Yes, you can put blasters. Yes, you can take Trueborn and put like 4 blasters in a unit. The problem is that any savvy opponent's going to go, oh, those are your Trueborn with 4 blasters? Okay, that's transport is dead. And even if it doesn't kill a lot of them in the explosion, which a lot of times it does, they're effectively not going to move very far because they're out of their transport, and it's an 18-inch gun. And once they're out, they're going to get killed pretty easily, because once Eldar are out of their transports, they usually die pretty quick. So I think a good role for Dark Eldar is shooting poison, and because they've got range. I mean, look at their splinter cannons; it's 36-inch range. They can dance around and shoot things and just spamming things that have a lot of poison. Those mainly, I'm thinking venoms, but you can do raiders. The problem with the Cabalites in there is that there's 24-inch range, but still you can do it. You can do things like bikes. You can do things like the Razorwing fighters have, well, twin-link splinter rifles or splinter cannon, but they also have like monocyte or necrotoxin missiles, which are just going to wreck face on troops. I mean, because you're trying to kill infantry and monstrous creatures and high toughness things. Like, you don't care with poison if something is toughness 5 or higher, because it just doesn't matter. I can shoot a Wraith Knight or a Riptide or the Grey Knight one that I'm blanking on, and they don't care what the toughness is. So I think that's their strength there. And the point I'm getting at is that Harlequins, they are good in close combat. And the problem is some of the dish doesn't really cater to it. But here's where their strength is. It's not just that they can actually punch and they can make a punch. They've got troops that can do a punch. But here's a good thing. Their bikes are more durable and actually can punch. But the bikes and the Void Weavers can take Haywire blasters, and that's something that Dark Eldar have a hard time with. And I think it's counterintuitive, because he's like, oh, I can just take Dark Lances all over the place. And yeah, I guess you could, and you could spam up on raiders and stuff like that. But I don't think you're going to do as well poison wise. But if you do a lot of venoms and stuff like that, you're not going to have a lot of high strength guns, and the Haywire blasters kind of answer that on a very movable ship. Scourges are good with the Haywire blasters, but yes, they move 12 inches, but they're still not as maneuverable or as tough. They're easier to kill off than a vehicle that can jank or can move really fast or flat out. It's a fast skimmer. And so I think these the Void Weavers and the Sky Weavers are going to be an answer that the Dark Eldar don't have, that they can answer with. And so I think together they can work really well for providing Haywire to kill vehicles and walkers and super heavy vehicles and walkers. And the the Dark Eldar can target everything else much easier. Now the problem is the Gargantuan creatures is that poison only wounds on a 6-up. So instead of 4-up, you're only getting 6-up. But still, if you can do enough damage, most of the Gargantuan creatures have a 3-up save. So there's still a chance you're going to, a third of the time you're going to fail. It's harder when you've got a 2-up Gargantuan creature, a 2-up save. That does get a lot harder. And then in that case, the Eldar, or the Dark Eldar and the Harlequins don't really have a good answer to it, because they're high strength stuff. Like the Prism Cannon is only strength 7, so it's harder to wound those guys. But anyway, I think those two in combination really make a really good dual codex that can put them closer to top tier. I think by themselves, they're not. And I think they kind of need to be allied into something. And it's kind of been a running joke from a few people that Dark Eldar, ever since it came out, is a Codex Eldar supplement. And I don't agree with that. And not that I don't like my Eldar. I just think that Dark Eldar can do it on their own. But they're harder. It's harder to play. Dark Eldar, and I think Harlequins even more so, are a finesse army that are not forgiving. So if you start taking some losses or you make some bad choices as a general, you're losing that game, and badly. You're not going to bounce back from it as well as some other armies that you can take some losses and it's very forgiving. So I think this is going to be an unforgiving codex. Anyway, that's my review of the Codex Harlequins. I'm glad they got their own codex, and I'm glad they got one. I didn't believe it at first because I thought it had been so long since we had one. I thought, well, that's a weird rumor. It's a speculation. And then when things started kind of trickling out or rumors started happening, I'm like, well, maybe it's going to be a supplement for Eldar and Dark Eldar, like an Eldar Dark Eldar supplement. And I'm glad it isn't. I'm glad it's its own codex. It can be its own thing. Yeah, there's a few things that I would like to have different, like an HQ and stuff like that. We talked about it. But for overall, I'm very happy with it. And overall, I think it's a good thing. And overall, I'm super excited to have it. So, thank you again, GW. This is the end of the video. If you have any questions or anything else you want to chat about, let me know. If you have questions at any point, like I said, you can always Facebook me or leave a message on the YouTube page or email me at wargamershawn@yahoo.com. Until then, keep on gaming and take care, guys, okay?
Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move.
Goodbye. 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 Bye-bye. Goodbye. See ya. Bye for now. Bye for now. Goodbye. I like bottoms.